Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Casting. I'm one of the HCS commentators, and we have another HCS weekly report where today we're going to be breaking down one of the top 16 teams that are going into Dallas land, and we've landed today on number 7, and that's going to be Native White. Before we get to the video, though, I got to ask you a question. If you're going to make a new Native team, we'll call it Native Gold, and you had to pick any players from the 6th seed or below, so you can pause the video right here. Who would be on your Native Gold team? All right, let's get to the video. So, Native White, another team that wasn't affected by Rosetermania, the V2 Rosetermania that happened. You have Barcode, Gilkey, McWin, and Tapping Buttons. Obviously, just tons of storylines and tons of talent on this team. You have Tapping Buns, I would argue the number 1 player out of Latin America. He was poached and came over towards Native White. Barcode, number 1 player out of ANZ, he was brought over from to play with G2. Eventually finds himself here alongside his old G2 teammate in Gilkey, and then you have McWin, who couldn't compete all of last year, was just waiting, and now that he's been unleashed, you have a mix of like an old school and new school roster. You have firepower, you have intelligence, you have everything that you would want on a roster. So let's take a look how Native White have been. So, before we get there, we'll talk real quick on what pool they're in. I apologize. Native White do find himself in Pool B. They find themselves as the 2nd seed within that pool against Sentinels and 6 Karma. And mind you, I think Sentinels have been playing decent recently. 6 Karma was that team that was, I think, 1 kill away from beating out Proton Gaming and making it to championship bracket. And then obviously you have FaZe as the 1st seed coming within this pool, 2nd seed coming within the tournament. Like Native White versus Sentinels, I think both teams have shown that they can perform on LAN. Both teams have showed that they can come in game plan to be well prepared. But I will say that I think Native White just they have firepower. They come at you. And although I feel like their performance recently hasn't been all that to write home about, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later, I do like Native White. So don't see them win against FaZe. I can see them beating Sentinels, although I think that's going to be a very good matchup, and I can beat them. I see them beating 6 Karma, which I think many people would agree to that. But the same way that I can feel them, I can say they can beat almost anybody, is the same way I can feel like they can be beat. Don't sleep on 6 Karma. Definitely don't sleep on Sentinels. And Native White will have to perform going into DreamHack Dallas. Back in Charlotte, Native White went on a miraculous run. Honestly, it was one for the history books. You're talking about a team that made it through open bracket, through pool play, and then to get top 4 at the event. I mean, you got to think about the teams that have made it out of open bracket and that have made it to top 4. Only one team comes to mind when I think of that, and that was the Sentinels roster with the whole Router 2 scenario, and World 2 couldn't play, so they had 4 more in. But do you really count that run? Like, this was a real underdog story, a real open bracket run, a real run, and just an incredible story for Native White to make it into the top 4. And now the question becomes was that a fluke? Native White overperform? Who are Native White? How good are they? The first 4K, Native White once again missing out on the top 8. From 4th place on LAN to missing out on the top 8, a little disappointing. When when we look at the upper bracket, they did end up running to Complexity, which, by the way, Complexity is the first time that Collected Monster came into the mix, and Complexity not only beat Native White but beat Optic and SSJ and everybody within their path. That Complexity roster was insane. So the fact that Complexity did 3-0 them, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm happy about it, but I will say that, you know, not the end of the world to lose to Complexity. In the lower bracket, they did lose out to Avengers. And this is why I feel like if we know now what we knew back then, you know, I think a lot of people were sleeping on Avengers. I wasn't, you were. A lot of people were sleeping on Avengers. I think most probably would have said that Native White should have won this matchup, and I would even agree with it. Like, I think Avengers and Native White are going to be a really good matchup, but I think Native White kind of almost somewhat fresh coming off of that Charlotte performance. I think Native White should have won this matchup, but either way, Avengers do end up coming out with the 3-1, and we soon, or at least now, know that not as big of an upset as people might have over exaggerated just last month. Going into May 4th, not a 4K, but a 2K Open Series. And Native White against nowhere to be found in the top 8. See what happened. A little bit of native on native crime right here. Native Red coming out with the 3-1 over Native White. So not too much of an upset. Native Red, the number 4 seed in North America. You know, one of the teams that can get red hot and beat almost anybody in the league. Now, forget their pool, but in the league, Native Red are that damn good. Not going to beat them up too much. G1 end up 3-1ing them, and actually, if I go and look, I believe this might have been one of the first times that we saw Suppressed coming in for G1, and during those first 2 tournaments that Suppressed came in, and to be honest, even now, Suppressed is a powerhouse, man, and they were and G1 started to look like they were getting back on the right train once they first brought in Suppressed, even after dropping Suspector, which a lot of people tended to question that roster move. G1 come out with the 3-0 win over Native White. I guess I'm not going to beat them up for losing out to G1, but I will say kind of the same thing with the Avengers. Like, we're getting 3-0'd by all the top 3 teams. I don't want to see any team get 3. So, especially a team that I feel like you're much closer to G1 than Avengers are to Optic, and some people might find that offensive, but hey, it's the reality. You're talking about the number 7, number 6 seed, and I already beat up Avengers for not taking a win off of the 3, 2, or 1 seed. So there's no way that I can sit here and not punish Native White a little bit for not getting a win on G1. I think you have to. I think if anything, you got to take this to Game 5 every single time. You're that good. So were they, obviously, but you're that good. And for the final final online tournament, the DreamHack Dallas qualifier, the Phase 4K. Unlike Rebellion, who kind of made like a late run going in, once again, Native White finds himself on the outside looking in for the top 8, and this becomes this is even more troublesome than you would think, because instead of missing out by 1 round, you end up getting top 16. Which for a team that literally just got 4th place on LAN is, to me, unacceptable. 1-3 by Space Station Gaming and Pool Play. 2-3 by Proton Gaming, which is a good team, but a team that you have to beat going into pools. You're the number 7 seed. You have to beat Proton Gaming. You got to figure out a way. And in the same breath, another Game 5 lost to Status Quo. Up until these two, I would say Native White, were losing reasonable matches. This to me is underperforming. And I'm not just trying to be a jerk just for the sake of being a jerk. I'm hardest on teams that I know have potential and that I know that are not hitting them. And with that much talent on the roster, you have to figure it out some way, somehow. You got to figure it out. And whether it's through objective efficiency, whether it's through bullying and slays, I don't care how you do it. You got to do the damn thing. You got to make it out of pool. And I said before, we now we're going into this year this year asking who are Native White. Did they overperform at Charlotte? Are they just not an online team? Because they didn't do all that good. I hate to break it to y'all, but the reason why they ended up in the open bracket is because they were awful online. They were awful online pre-Charlotte. They went into Charlotte and shut everybody up, including myself, because I was questioning them. Same thing as Charlotte. I saw the online results and said, this is abysmal. They go into Charlotte and they said, cool, shut up. Same thing we're seeing now. We got a bad performance in the first 4K, a bad performance in the Open Series, a horrendous performance here in the final 4K leading up until this tournament. But one could say maybe they just are terrible on. I just want to take a look at the scrims recently. And the one thing I will say is when I'm looking at these scrims, like, yes, you got 9-3 by Optic. Optic pretty dominant. Space Station 12-2, you again another dominant performance, and then 6-2 by FaZe, again another dominant performance. What I will say is one thing I'm noticing is that they're not shying away from competition. They're not shying away from the top three. They said, look, if we're gonna practice, let's make that practice worth it. Not gonna beat up on some no-name teams to get their confidence. They said, no, we're gonna go up against Optic, we're gonna go up against SSG, we're gonna go up against FaZe, and by the time we go up against anybody else who's lesser than those three teams, it's gonna feel easy. Like, if you done spend an hour sparring with Mike Tyson, you go up against Joe Schmo from across the street, it's gonna feel easy. And maybe that's the strategy going in for Native White. Either way, I would have, I was a little rough on Sentinels, a little rough on Rebellion, a tiny bit rough on Avengers. Out of the four teams that we've gone through so far, Native White are the ones who are underperforming the most compared to expectations. But I will also say that of the four, Native White might be the most dangerous team on. Now it's time for them to shut us up once again. All right, guys, HS Weekly Report. Same thing as before. If you like this kind of comment, share it down below. We've already done 3 teams so far: Sentinels, Shopify Rebellion, and Avengers. If you haven't watched it, make sure you check the comments. I'll have a link for those videos somewhere in the comments down below. And tomorrow we're gonna do G1 and Complexity. So make sure you guys check it out. All right.